Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of My Hornby Hobby. So, the Unlucky Tug has released his season 14 retrospective, and he spoke about Misty Island Rescue. And as you all know, this film isn't very well regarded in the Thomas community. And the Unlucky Tug is planning on doing his own video of how to fix Misty Island Rescue, because there is potential there. And I've got some ideas of my own. These are ideas that he's probably going to come up with himself, you know, when he does his video. I think there is real potential there. You know, the overall plot, you know, if you tweak it right, it could work. You know, having one of Thomas's bad decisions lead him to Misty Island, and then more bad decisions keep him from coming back to Sodor. So, here's how I would fix Misty Island Rescue. So, lose the rhyming. I think I speak for all of us when I say that is probably the biggest bugbear about the movie. Everything rhymes. How many times does Thomas say, "I will not be scared, I will find a way to puff home to my friends at the end of the day," and then what's the other rhyme? You know, every other line rhymes. You know, Kevin rhymed and the Steamworks. Just give me a call, whatever you need, I'll take care of it all. You know, there's too much rhyming going on. That can be gotten rid of. In the same vein, there's too much alliteration. And like I said, so the narrator will say giggled and jiggled, puffed and huffed. You know, I know that's not alliteration. I know what alliteration is. But it's that is annoying. So that can be gotten rid of. Or at least limited to maybe just the narrator. And maybe space it out, at least. Remove or rewrite the diesel subplot. So, of course, in Misty Island Rescue, there's a part where Diesel takes the Joby logs. They end up getting just lost. And it sets up for a Diesel subplot. You know, Diesel just wants to be useful. Thomas says, "You can't be useful, you're a Diesel." And I think they should either not have it there at all and have something else happen to the Joby wood, so that then Thomas has to collect more, or they rewrite it. The way they could rewrite it is, again, Diesel takes the Joby wood, and then when Thomas needs rescuing, Diesel comes and helps. And Thomas will be like, "Diesel, you saved me after I was so rude to you. Well, you saved me, now we're even." I feel like that could work. Let me know your thoughts on that. Don't send Edward, Gordon and James to Misty Island. What was the point in that? Why would you send engines to Misty Island? I know that Unlucky Tug has mentioned that several times anytime he talks about this movie. Sending 3 engines to Misty Island. There was just no point in it. Just absolutely no point. I mean, I'm guessing what they wanted to do was some kind of grand reunion thing, you know, where they're lost in the mist and they just hear each other's whistles and they come together. You know, I'm guessing that's what they were going for, but I don't know for sure. Excuse me one moment. There we go. So, next bit. Give the login locos a reason to go to Sodor. They know they don't have enough oil to get to Sodor, and yet they just go anyway, and then they end up running out of fuel in the tunnel. So maybe Thomas should give them, you know, some reason. You know, maybe when they say, "Oh, we won't help you. You didn't want to play with us," you know. And then he's like, "If you help me load up these Joby wood and get it back to Sodor, then You can be restored at the steamworks. You can be repaired and repainted. You can have all that. Get rid of the pointless filler. What was the point of Gordon going to work with Whiff? It was just put in there and it was never mentioned again. There's too much pointless filler. It goes from Sodor, Misty Island, Sodor, Misty Island. It's moving between the two locations too much. This is all about Misty Island Rescue. You should focus on, the Sodor team searching for Thomas, and Misty Island, Thomas learning his way around, figuring out how to do things. And maybe not have him bossing around the logging locos, because that's their home. Give the tunnel a proper reason for existing. Because Whiff just goes, you can't build your office here, sir. There's the tunnel to Misty Island. It needs to have a proper setup, I think. Where it's like, oh, this is the tunnel to Misty Island, sir. It collapsed back in X year. We used to be able to get Joby wood from there. Give it a reason for being. Don't just shoehorn it in like they did. And then limit the use of "that's right." That is 90% of Ferdinand's script. His dialogue. All he says is either "I'm Ferdinand" or "that's right." Sometimes he says something else. Give him more of a personality than that. He just seems like the dim-witted one. That's right. Even look at his teeth. They're like a true American. Well, the American stereotype. That's what I mean. Make Dash carry a flatbed. When they are about to take the tunnel back to Sodor, Bash and Ferdinand and Thomas all have something to carry, but Dash doesn't. He's just not pulling anything. Or, better yet, maybe what we could have had is Thomas is trying to pull all of them on his own. The logging locos push from the back, and they try and help that way. I don't know, Have Harold see the smoke. Harold should be searching, up high. Captain's searching on the water, and then flies over Misty Island, sees the smoke signals from Thomas, and then goes back to Sodor. 3 smoke signals spotted over Misty Island, sir. And then Percy goes, that must be Thomas. He said that if he was ever on Misty Island, he would blow 3 puffs of smoke. And then they, send Percy and Diesel down the tunnel to rescue them. Remove Whiff. There was no point in having him. Maybe, if you didn't have that pointless scene with Gordon at the garbage works, whatever you want to call it, at the waste dump, didn't have that, and maybe didn't have him explain about the tunnel, or maybe have him explain thoroughly about the tunnel, and then Whiff's like, I know these tracks really well, sir. I used to go down here, or something. Misty Island needs a proper backstory. As we see, when Thomas comes across the logging camp, it's a camp, there's houses. So it clearly served an industry back in the day. So I think maybe Thomas should go, where is everyone? Is it just you 3? And then they're like, oh, everyone moved away when this ran out, or, for a better life. I don't know. Maybe they should give a better reason for why it's just deserted and why Bash, Dash and Ferdinand are just there. I mean, they make as much sense as Merlin, Lexi and Theo. They're just there. There's no point in them. Who are Bash, Dash and Ferdinand serving? No one. They're not serving anyone. They're just existing on Misty Island. Have the tunnel about to collapse. I think then there's not enough stakes. There's not enough of a shock factor. So maybe, if you want to keep Whiff in, then keep him in. And then he and Percy burst through. And then there was trouble. The tunnel was about to collapse. And then, they'll have to puff hard to get out of there. It's crumbling behind them. And then they just get out, massive dust cloud. And then, hooray moment. And keep the end song. I like end songs in the Thomas movies. So that can be kept. I'm sure there's like a billion other things that could be kept. Well, that could be tweaked. I definitely feel that there's a potential there. Now, as for the raft, I think that could stay. And here's why. Because the Fat Controller says, you made the right decision, Thomas. That goes to Thomas's smoke box. And then he goes, oh, I can go on that. And then he's like, are you sure, Thomas? The Fat Controller said I make good decisions. This is a good decision. And then that leads into Misty Island. And he's like, I'll not make that mistake again. And then he goes around Misty Island and makes all these other mistakes. You know, because that's what Thomas is about, learning from your mistakes. And then that ultimately comes back to bite him in the bunker when they're stuck in the tunnel together. And he's like, oh, I should have listened to you. Make it a bit more impactful. But yeah, I feel that there's a potential to Misty Island Rescue. I feel like there is. You know, I just feel like they could have had Harold and Captain doing a bit more work. Less filler. Spend more time on Misty Island. And not just going to and from Soda or Misty Island. Unless you're showing, you know, a searching scene. Or, you know, there is potential there. So I think if they rewrote it, this could be a good movie. This could be a good movie. It really could be. Both me and the Unlucky Tug scored this as the worst film in the Thomas and Friends franchise. And it's not hard to see why, to be honest. There are very, very, very few good things about it. You know, there's about 3 or 4 good things. You know, the animation, the score, and the atmosphere. You know, the whole atmosphere of Misty Island. But they're few and far between. And I think if they fixed all those things that I mentioned, Misty Island Rescue could become a really good movie. So that's my thoughts on how to fix Misty Island Rescue. What did you think? What do you think could be changed or improved or left out entirely to make this a passable movie? Now you may be wondering, am I going to be doing the same thing for all the other movies? Because, I mean, Day of the Diesels is after this. No, before this in the list. You know, it goes this one, then Day of the Diesels. Day of the Diesels is only slightly better than this. So maybe I will do that in the future. Maybe, depending on how this video goes. But let me know your thoughts on Misty Island Rescue as a whole and my rewrite. They were just points, but, you know, that covers a general area. A broad area, sorry. But that's it for this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Until next time, stay safe and thanks for watching.